Here.
Recording in progress.
Director Ricky?
Here.
Director Calandri?
Here.
Director Urasic? He's on. Derek, can you unmute yourself?
I am here. Sorry, I had 5 things popping up in front of me. So sorry there. I am here.
Okay, thank you. And Director Paris?
Here.
Phyllis Stannon?
Here.
Kate White?
Here.
Craig Parton?
Here.
Matt Knutson?
Here.
And Pete Thompson?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And we'll go on to item 3, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
And I think that, who made the original motion? Kathy seconded it.
John.
John made the motion, second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion by roll call?
Director McLaren?
Yes.
Director Ricky?
Yes.
Director Calandri?
Yes.
Director Urasic?
Yes.
And Director Paris?
Yes, motion's carried unanimously. We're now on item 4, public comments for non-agenda items. At this time, if anybody is wishing to talk to us about anything that is not on the agenda, now is your time.
Rob,
Yes.
this is Kyle. How are you?
Hi, Mr. Kyle. How are you, sir?
Okay. I just wanted to say, as you all know, the illegal marijuana being in our adjudicated area has exploded. The Sheriff's Department conducted some raids for about 10 days. That's all they could do due to a lack of funds. And yet they removed over $1 billion worth of this illegal crop. And some estimates say that those raids netted about 20% of what is actually being grown in the AV. The cost to our basin in water thefts was hundreds of acre feet or more. It's been reported that the LA County Board of Supervisors is looking to legalize commercial marijuana grows in the unincorporated part of LA County. All the people that I've talked to want the AV Watermaster Board to write a letter to the LA County Board of Supervisors asking them to A, not allow commercial growing of marijuana in the unincorporated LA County, and B, help us stop the illegal growing, which will protect our water in the basin. C, fully fund the sheriff and give them whatever assistance run these water thieves out of our county. And D, enact stiffer penalties to persuade these water thieves not to come back. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Any other public
Hey, Rob,
comment?
this is Van Dam.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with Galen on that. We've got them stealing water out of our wheel lines over here at the ranch. I can see where tracks have went in at night. And so this is a big issue. Water theft's a big issue right down the valley.
Thank you, Gary. Any other public comments? Going once, going twice. We'll move on to, there are no special.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can we discuss this now or can we discuss it later in the agenda? This is a serious issue.
No, John, we can't discuss things under public comments that are not on the agenda. At the end of the meeting, any director can request that something be put on the agenda, and that would be the proper place to do that.
I see. You're correct. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no special presentations. We're now on the consent agenda. And that's items A, B, C, D, and E. Payment of bills, treasurer's report, accounts receivable, minutes of June 30th, 2021 special meeting, and minutes of June 30th, 2021 workshop meeting.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items.
Motion made by Adam to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
This is Derek. I'll second.
Second by Derek. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urosic,
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes. We're now on advisory committee report. And we have the written report on page 24. And is there a report by our advisory committee?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. This is James. I believe the memo speaks for itself, but if there's
James, your volume's real low. If you can speak up into whatever mic you have.
I took the phone off of speaker. So
Okay,
I
great.
believe the memo speaks for itself, but if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. But I believe that, the Watermaster staff and the Watermaster themselves are doing a good job addressing all the concerns from the advisory.
Great. Thank you, James. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions of James regarding the advisory committee report that's on page 24 of our agenda packet? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 8, public hearing to consider the Antelope Valley Watermaster 2020 annual report. And I believe I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Motion made by Kathy. Is there a second?
Second by Adam.
John.
Okay, go
I
ahead,
think
John.
John got the honors of the second.
Okay.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to open the public hearing to consider the Antelope Valley Watermaster 2020 annual report by roll call vote?
I
We're not
think
hearing-
I'm sorry, Director McLaren,
yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urosic,
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes. Motion's carried unanimously. The public hearing is now open, and I believe that is going to be the Phyllis and Kate show.
It is. Thank you. Good morning. This is Phyllis Stannon with Todd Groundwater, and I'll take the agenda item this morning. Thank you for attending our public hearing. This is on the 2020 annual report. We reviewed that report last time, and I won't go over it again unless there are questions, but I did want to go through just a couple of quick comments on edits and schedule just to set the stage so that we can begin discussing any final public comments or revisions that anyone might have. So just as a quick reminder, we produced a draft on June 10th, and in response to comments from the parties that we discussed some of which we discussed last time, we produced a revised draft and put that on the website on July the 7th. Pending public comments and board direction today, we will finalize that report by tomorrow and have it ready to get to the court on Friday. Just as an update on what we have done since the July 7th draft, revised draft was posted, I've just summarized a few things that were changed in the report. Obviously, we're continuing to get information in, and so we will update up until the last minute. We got additional annual production reports, so that required updates to tables 9, 10, and appendices B, E, and M, and also our signal reporting numbers. We also made additional minor edits to the text in response to not only our final review, but also some comments from parties. We clarified some wording, made some revisions of errors that we had, a couple of typos that we had, and changed a footnote on one of our tables. We also updated contact information, which is provided in Appendix L. So based on that, we had final comments due on July 21st, And today is our public hearing. The board will take this opportunity to review the report and comments, any additional public comments that anyone might have, and make recommendations for final revisions and provide approval from the board to the Watermaster engineer to finalize the report and get it posted. We will post the final 2020 annual report on Friday. At the same time, that afternoon, we will be submitting it to the court in compliance with the August 1st deadline. August 1st is on Sunday, so we need to get this in on Friday. We're also going to be submitting a Sigma reporting series of tables to the Department of Water Resources via their Sigma website. And so that's all I have for item 8. And we're still on item 8. We are still in the public hearing. But while I have the floor, I just thought I would just say something about the resolution, which would be item 9. So during this public hearing, we will get information from the board with respect to any additional comments or revisions for the annual report. And then by that resolution, we anticipate that the board will approve filing with the court by the August 1st deadline and approve also filing with the Department of Water Resources in compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We do put this full annual report on the DWR website and then approve any final edits. Just FYI, of course, we're going to make a few little minor edits. We're going to put final on the cover and incorporate that throughout the text and footers, for example, as appropriate. We'll be updating section 1.4 to document this public hearing and the board decision on the report. Any other minor edits that we've already kind of talked about a bit from the previous slide, and any additional public comments from this hearing as directed by the board. So at this point, I will stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it back over to the board to continue with the public hearing and any advisory committee or comments from the public that anybody might have on the annual report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phyllis. And now we have advisory committee comments. James, anything from the advisory committee?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Rob, I had a comment, Rob.
John, hang on for 1 second. James, anything from the advisory committee?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There was just some comments about the annual report, and questions were asked about the basin being managed and understanding the long-term availability of imported water. That was one of the comments. And then, that was one of the concerns regarding the annual report. That's all I have. If anybody else has some comments, that'd be great.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Jane?
Yes, Adam. So the concerns are, if we continue to allow the pumping at the current rate, and if we continue to stay in a drought circumstance, what is going to happen if we keep allowing these people to pump? Are we going to tell them to stop pumping eventually? So it was suggested. Mr. Thompson said that he would maybe be willing to do a presentation on where the state water contractors are, and it was recommended that the Watermaster Board actually ask him to do a presentation on how much water the state water contractors have available to offset that pumping over time.
Has the latest version of the AD Air 1 been completed?
I do not have that information. That would be more directed towards maybe Peter or Matt.
Yes, Adam, this is Matt. The last update of the Antelope Valley Irwin plan was completed in 2019. Okay. And I believe the next update is a couple years out.
I see. So if we are to rely on the water supply picture in the AV during the multiple or the different scenarios of water supply availability, it would be the 2019 AV Air 1, correct?
Yes, that's a good planning document. And then also the region water suppliers also just recently updated their urban water management plans, which would be an additional planning document that we could rely on.
Sure. Did we ever decide, we being the AV Watermaster Board, did we ever decide to be part of the R1? Did we approve that integrated regional water management plan in 2019?
No, we did not.
We did not. Would you, I know you probably will talk in your report, but would you recommend that the board officially become part of the 11 entities in the AV R1 and then adopt this plan going forward?
That's something we can consider. We could discuss, amending the MOU between the regional water group, water management group members, and see if the water master wants to be part of that. We could definitely kick that around.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comments at this time? And John, did you have a comment earlier?
No, I think it was Galen wanted to say something, and then I have a question after Galen's done.
Okay, great.
Hey, Rob, this is Kyle.
Go ahead, Galen.
I just wanted to, maybe Phyllis wanted to comment on this too. On page 22 of the annual report, on bullet point 3, it says that 80% of the parties on Exhibit 3 and 4 have been sold Watermaster approved meters, although the compliance reporting requirements remains inconsistent. On Exhibit 3, it has 11 parties, and they're missing reports on 3 of them. On Exhibit 4 has 114 parties and missing reports on 3. And on the state of California has 9 parties and missing reports on 7. This is unacceptable. We're 3 years in. This hinders the engineer from doing her job properly by being able to have those numbers. The Watermaster Board needs to, I think, direct the council to bring these people into compliance or penalize them. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen. Any other public comments?
Well, and I'm kind of right on the same page as Galen, Rob. Enforcing these unmetered wells, what can we do? I think there's been plenty of time. In the state of California, why can't we have Craig write them a letter? They're not God. They don't have the right to not comply with what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Going once, going twice. Public comments are gone. We're now on closing of the public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
This is Adam. I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion made by Adam. Is there a second?
This is Derek. I'll second.
Second by Derek. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion.
Rob, hold on. I have some discussions. What can we do? What are we going to do on enforcing these unmetered
John, the next item on the agenda is consideration of approving the annual report. And then I think later on, we're coming to the public hearing on the amendment 14N of the Antelope Valley Water Master Rules and Regulations. I think the comments for what you want to discuss can be made in either director's comments or may come up in discussion on these 2 items.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing?
Hey, Rob, this is maybe for you or for council. I guess I'm a little confused of what I'm used to in a public hearing and how board interact. And is there proper kind of procedural ways that isn't, of how to understand a public hearing to make sure that we're addressing it properly?
Sure, and we're going to have time to discuss that. If you want to have further discussion, we can have that.
No, more of I felt like we were getting into board discussion during public hearing, and I'm wanting to make sure if that's proper.
Well, we're coming up to the approval of the annual report. I think either way is fine. We have had some discussion in the public hearing from the board. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of closing the public hearing by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ricky,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urasic,
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes, motion's carried unanimously. We're now on item 9, consideration possible action to approve the Antelope Valley Watermaster 2020 annual report. And said report be filed with court and Department of Water Resources reporting system in compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The resolution is on page 30. And is there any discussion about approving the resolution? Any discussion about approving the resolution?
And if I could just point out a minor typo in the resolution, the second to last paragraph on page 30 of the resolution, the date should be changed from August 2nd to August 1st.
I did do it to August 2nd because August 1st is a Sunday.
Oh, okay. But I think to be consistent with what Phyllis reported.
Okay, I can change it. But
Change it
that
to
is why
August
I did
1st.
change
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I didn't think we'd be filing on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Phyllis.
No problem.
I'll change that though.
Okay, the resolution will be edited to reflect August 1st. Any further discussion on the resolution? At this time, is there a motion to approve the resolution? R2123.
I move that we approve resolution R21-23. Adam here.
Motion made by Adam. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion on the approval of R2123? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ricky,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urasic,
Yes.
and Director Paris.
Yes. Now we're on item 10, public hearing to amendment section 14N of the Antelope Valley Watermaster Rules and Regulations. At this time, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
This is Derek. I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Derek. Is there a second?
Adam, second.
Motion second by Adam. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve opening the public hearing by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ricky, Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urasic,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Ricky,
Yes.
Motion's carried unanimously. The public hearing is now open. And I believe Craig will be conducting the public hearing.
Yes. Let me just note for the board that we'll get the annual report filed, and the hope is it's done Friday and submitted to the court for approval. This memo and amendment to the rules and regulations with the new section 14N is been on the board's agenda a number of months. Began in September of last year, where the board directed us as council to look at issues related to the new production applications. We've gotten substantial feedback from the advisory committee over the past 3 months, have had public hearings on the proposed amendment 14N at least twice, and then had some minor amendments that we posted right after the June 30th meeting. of the board. And so we're back with the similar memo. A couple of changes have been made. You'll see in the resolution, the advisory committee recommended 2 amendments. One, to add 2 words into the language of 14N small Roman numeral 5, which we did. And the other was a question inquiry whether a section was properly titled, because it didn't refer to metering requirements. And we did not change the memo or the amended language in response to that, because we think metering is dealt with in the section incorporated. So we're comfortable that the attached resolution 21-24, which is on page 41 of your board packet, reflects in general the consensus of the board and comments we got from the advisory committee, and happy to answer any questions on it, though we've been through this on several occasions in the past. The idea would be, if the resolution is approved, we would move the court for approval of the amendment to 14N and have it adopted as soon as possible, but before the next board meeting. The memo that has been the operative memo with respect to this issue is found on page 33 of your board packet, and there's a red line version of the edits we made and a clean version. Again, this is all material in general that the board has seen before. So we're happy to take any comments. Hopefully we can move forward with the approval today and adoption of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any comments from the advisory committee? James?
I have no comments.
Thank you. And we're now open for public comments. Any public comments regarding 14 amendment of section 14N of the Antelope Valley Watermaster Rules and Regulations? Any public comments? Hearing no public comments, we're now need a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, John.
Motion made by John. Is there a second?
I second that.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to close the public hearing by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urosic,
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes, motion is carried unanimously. We're now on item 11, consideration possible action adopting section 14. Motion made by Adam. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by John. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve resolution R2124? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urosic,
Yes.
and Director Paris.
Yes, motion's carried unanimously. We're now on item 12, consideration possible action on well applications, new production applications, and new point of extraction applications.
Morning, this is Kate White from Todd Groundwater. Is my volume okay for everyone?
Yes.
We hear you well.
Great. There is one new production application on today's agenda for consideration of approval. It starts on page 49 of the packet. And the Hernandezes recently bought a pistachio tree farm and are requesting 80 acre-feet per year to water about 608 existing pistachio trees, and would like to plant an additional 1,142 trees for a total of 1,750 trees. And the water demand estimates are based on the average estimated water use of 40 gallons per day per tree. And the Hernandezes also have 3 acre-feet per year of small pumper production rights. previous owner of the property, Elmer Martinez, had submitted a small pumper qualifying documentation that was approved in January of 2019. And the agricultural well was determined to qualify as a small pumper class well, and he was asked to meter the well. He subsequently sold the property to the Hernandez family in late 2019, and to date, the well has not been metered. The previous owner, Mr. Martinez, irrigated the trees with the existing well and had said that the well could not produce enough water for the trees, and he reportedly had additional water hauled in for irrigation. The Hernandezes have continued to irrigate the existing trees with this unmetered well and also say that the well does not produce enough water for the existing trees. They would like to install a new well and also keep the existing well to irrigate the existing and proposed trees. The existing well was installed in 2011 and is about 400 feet deep with a 6.5-inch diameter. The well completion report indicates that the well can yield 8 gallons per minute, which is about 13 acre-feet per year if pumping continuously. The proposed well will be about the same depth and have a 5-inch casing and located about 500 feet southeast of the existing well. Figure 1, which is on page 52 of the packet, shows the location of the Hernandez parcel with respect to spring 2020 groundwater contours, and it's in the West Antelope subarea. The parcel is about 4.5 miles southeast of AVAC's high desert water bank. Hydrographs from nearby wells are shown in figure 2, which is on page 53 of the packet, although it looks like the hydrographs were truncated in the PDF that's in the packet. The hydrograph for the closest well shows a decrease in water levels between 2012 and about 2017, and then an increase between 2017 and 2020. And this well is about 2/3 of a mile east of the Hernandez parcel. And the slight increase in water levels may reflect recharge that occurred at the high desert water bank in 2017 and 2018. Figure 3 is an aerial photograph that shows land use in the vicinity of the Hernandez parcel. That's on page 54 of the packet. The area is predominantly rural with some agricultural irrigation. The California aqueduct is about 1,400 feet to the southwest. There appears to be several rural residences within the vicinity of the Hernandez parcel. One's about 600 feet north, and another property is about 750 feet northeast. If the current well is producing 13 acre-feet per year, the additional production of about 70 acre-feet per year that they're requesting is unlikely to cause significant water level declines in wells on these neighboring properties. Because the Hernandez will be required to pay a replacement water assessment, there is no material injury associated with groundwater storage and sustainable yield. The new production is not within the historical or current areas of inelastic land subsidence. There's also no expected impact to local water quality or recharge associated with this new production. In the absence of ongoing material injury associated with water levels, the production of 80 acre-feet per year is not expected to add any significant water level declines, and additional impacts are considered negligible and no material injury is expected. We have determined that the Hernandez application for new production is complete, provided the applicant agrees to the following. Install a Watermaster approved meter on the existing well as soon as possible. Pay administrative assessments and replacement water assessments for 2020 water use. And this can be estimated at 13 acre-feet per year based on the well yield provided in the well completion report. Install a Watermaster approved meter on the new well before any irrigation occurs. Provide the Watermaster with a well completion report for the new well. Report production of both wells and comply with all metering requirements in accordance with Antelope Valley Watermaster rules and regulations. And pay administrative assessments and replacement water assessments for all future production. The advisory committee report, which is on page 24 of the packet, had comments on this application. The second page of their memo, they did not make a recommendation on approval of it, but didn't also say to disapprove it. or to deny it. But they did provide comments, and the first two bulleted comments asked if the Watermaster engineer should consider alternative methods to estimate production, such as using crop requirements, estimated energy use, or California Edison pump test information. So the full water requirements of the existing 608 pistachio trees would be about 27 acre-feet per year based on a rate of 40 gallons per day per tree. And the well reportedly pumps at a rate of 8 gallons per minute, which is 13 acre-feet per year, and that's about half of the tree what the tree requires. We don't have a lot of funding for these analyses, and I made a judgment call about the level of the analysis necessary. Since this is a one-time estimate for 2020 water use, and it was based on available data from the well completion report, both the previous landowner and applicant indicate that the well does not produce enough water for the existing trees, and the difference between the 13 acre-feet per year and the 27 acre-feet per year, it's about 14 acre-feet per year. An electrical efficiency test performed by Southern California Edison could be used to estimate production if a recent one is available, although I have not asked the applicant for that. And the third bulleted question on the advisory committee memo asked if the applicant should fund the analysis on historical production, since there is no meter on the well. And if additional investigation is required, having an applicant cover these costs seems reasonable. So that is all I have, and it's now open for discussion.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Is there any discussion?
So this is go ahead, John.
No, you first.
Well, I have a lot of questions, so I think you should go ahead first.
Okay. All right. My first question is I want to do the math. You said that the existing well produces 13 acre-feet a year.
Correct.
You also indicated that there's going to be 1,700 trees that require 40 gallons a day per tree.
Correct.
So that comes to, if my number's right, that's 68,000 gallons a day. That leads me to believe they'll be using 6 acre-feet a month for about a 9-month period because you don't water trees year-round. Is my number correct up to now? So let me continue. So basically, if they required to run the whole 1,700 acres of trees, 54 acre-feet minus 13, that means they should only be requesting about 41 acre-feet.
I assume that the 40 gallons per day per tree was for the whole year.
Okay.
That's an average for the whole year.
As a farmer, I doubt that very seriously, but even if it does, the request is almost double what the requirement should be, unless I'm wrong.
And John, are you talking about the request for existing trees or for existing trees and future trees?
I'm talking, if we approve it, I'm talking about the 1,700 trees that will be there.
Okay, so that would be future, the 1,142, I heard. Those are planned trees and 608 existing trees, correct?
Yes, I added those together.
All right.
What the final number would be at the end of this planting, however many years it took.
Okay.
But my math may be wrong, but that's what I come up with.
What I did is I took 1,750 trees, multiplied that by 40 gallons per day per tree, and did a conversion for gallons per day to acre-feet per year, and then I got 78.4 acre-feet per year.
That's what I got. I got the same number.
Okay, then my math, I did something wrong in my math.
Yeah.
All right, so if you take 78 and then subtract the 13 that's produced, and that gives you a need for 65, and then the 80 gives him a little bit of a cushion, which I understand as a farmer you need to have. Okay, thank you.
So where did the 40 gallon per day per tree came from?
That came from the engineering firm that reviewed this, and they also confirmed that with other estimates. I did like a little literature search, and that seemed like a fairly good number. And I think it comes out to be like 5 acre feet per acre, for pistachio trees.
And Mr. Warner, I could offer a little insight.
Please.
So just at least in the Central Valley where we farm, you would assume, let's say 120 trees per acre. And you would assume that an acre uses somewhere between 4.5, maybe 5 acre feet per acre. Antelope Valley might be a little different because of wind. So if you take your 1,700 divided by 120 and then multiply that by 5, I get 71 acre feet total for the year.
Which is very close.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, I mean, Kate's right on.
Okay. All right. And then is there a distinction between mature trees and baby trees in water use? Kate?
Yes, I think there is, but I just use that general average.
I see. All right. Now, I have one question about, you mentioned that the previous owner was hauling water because the well was not producing the amount of water that is needed, correct?
Correct.
Where was he getting the hauled water from?
We had asked him that back in 2019 when he was complaining, and to ask him to show proof of that, and he said he was hauling it from his property that was outside of the Antelope Valley adjudicated area, and we never got any proof of that.
I see. So my comment is now related to a much broader view than just this case. The advisory committee said that we need to have some sort of a plan to guide us in making this decision, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's so critical for the Watermaster Board to have a planning document, whether it's of its own or by adopting the AV Irwin or by relying on the AV Irwin and the Integrated Renewable Water Management Plan prepared by the various retails and wholesale agencies in the AV. Because my concern, as a board, we've been lucky, we have AVEC and Palmdale Water District, and to a lesser extent, LCID, to rely on for replacement water. But the judgment says that, yes, you can use these agencies for replacement water, but also you could go somewhere else and look for replacement water. So I think the board need to take that into consideration in the approval of this additional extraction, notwithstanding the fact that they are paying replacement water. I get that. But the issue here is, where would we get that replacement water if AVEC and Palmdale Water Districts, as the case now with the drought, says, you know what, we only have enough water to meet our customers' demand, and we're not going to be able to do that. Now, one can say, well, maybe 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, we may get into a drought that extends beyond 5 years. We already planned on at least 3 years of drought. So what I'm saying is the Watermaster Board need to seriously consider finding and working out deals of other water supply options. Our chairperson at one point was leading an effort to see if we can use the recycled water in the AV. And I know we came to a point where we didn't even know, but after 1 or 2 discussions, we realized that all this recycled water in the AV was being used, which is great if it is. But that's one source. Now, there are other banks in the AV that we should consider. There are supply sources outside the Antelope Valley, like Cadiz and others, that we should look into. So we can't just kind of keep proving additional water supplies after additional water supplies without taking into consideration that ADEC and Palmdale Water District is not going to be there for us to provide that replacement water. I've heard this argument that, well, these 2 agencies have not said that they don't have the water. But with the drought, I've been through multiple droughts, and I know there were times when water was not available. We have to tell our customers to cut back 30% or 36% at one point, the latest drought. So I want the board to seriously consider that, consider adopting some of this planning document, consider using this information to guide our decision makings when these requests are being made. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Any other discussion?
A discussion about the meter. This is a piece of property that the Mr. Martinez did not put a meter on. He ignored the fact that that was the law. So this new Mr. Hernandez is taking on this defaulted pump, really. So I have an issue. I have an issue with that. And then Kate said they're going to be required to put on a meter as soon as possible. Who's watching this? How do we make sure he puts the meter on before he starts pumping water, or we just don't have a Mr. Martinez? And if Mr. Hernandez is listening in, I apologize. I'm not trying to make a accusation against anybody's character here, but this is just a big issue with me. And I think it's a big issue with a lot of Exhibit 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was, so it was the previous owner that we requested the information on where they got their additional water and they didn't comply. It was the previous, correct, right?
Yes, yep, that's true.
So things like that, when they aren't giving us the information and complying, it's almost like we need people out in the field to be able to check on this. And I know the Watermaster doesn't have money for that, but I don't know if that's something we can do. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out here, where there would be voluntary to go out. I mean, like
your volume went down.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think of some creative ideas on how we can really make sure, and it's nothing personal to these people, that what they say they're growing, what they're doing with the water. I think we're at a point where, especially if they're not going to comply and give the information, I'm concerned that they didn't comply to give us the information on where the additional water is coming from. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kathy, I have, if I may, I have a suggestion. And, you know, unfortunately, I come off a little half-cocked most of the time. If somebody is going to farm, say pistachios or any other crop, they have to go to the ag department and get permits to apply chemicals, whether you're organic or whether you're conventional.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if there's a way we could get the judge to maybe let us, when anybody applies for one of these new permits, that it's turned over to the ag department, and as part of their inspection of their routine inspections, they could verify that the crop that's supposed to be there is actually there. And it shouldn't cost anybody any money because the ag department has to go out as part of their normal routine.
I think that's a great idea, because that would help us get that information and kind of assure us that bad chemicals, things like that, aren't being put into our clean aquifer.
Mm-hmm. Well, we could ask for that information ourselves from the ag department, correct? John?
Adam, that's correct. You could, yeah, you can. This is Derek. You can pull that report. Staff can pull the report. That's public document.
Right. That's what I thought. Kathy, I think you have a very good point, and I think the advisory committee did mention that there is this potential way of estimating how much water was pumped through the use of Edison test. Now, Edison does pump efficiency tests for free. The only thing is they do it on their own schedule. Now, I'm sure you can pay for a pump efficiency test if you pay for it. I have advocated a long time ago, and I'll bring this up again today, that those that do not have meters, the Watermaster should ask them to pay for a pump efficiency test and compel them to submit the power usage, which they should have, or we can get it from Edison, and then we can convert the kilowatt hour used over the year. That typically makes or motivate people to install meters. It was used successfully here in the adjudicated basin in the LA area a long time ago, and I believe it will work in the AV. So it's a very easy way, very easy approach. It does take a little bit of an effort on our part, but it put the burden on the owner of the well to do all this testing, provide all the data, and all what we have to do a spreadsheet that just calculate how much acre feet was pumped based on the power usage. I think that's a good fallback on approach if people don't have meters.
Yes, and we were so on everyone metering and reporting their production. And now, as you can see from all the documentation of how many people are not complying, we really have to get on knowing what these meters were. And if we have the information from what he was previously pumping, let alone where he was getting the additional water from, it would make it easier for us to make this decision. And the fact that we aren't getting that information, we have to get back to serious, find something to do about knowing what everybody's pumping.
Okay, any further discussion? Kate, this is Rob. I have a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
With this application, is the applicant paying any past fees for use of water over the 3 acre feet?
2020, I thought.
Yeah, they will owe for 2020, but we kind of need to determine how much they need to pay for 2020. Okay. They bought the property in 2019, very end of 2019.
And I believe you said that the current well has a capacity of 14 acre feet per year.
Like 13 acre feet per year, based on that well completion report that said that it pumps 8 gallons per minute.
And then apparently the Hernandezes have continued to bring in water from some other location to water the current trees?
No, they. I think they're just using the existing well. Okay. But they do say that their pistachio trees are impacted by that, since it might be half of what.
And I understand that the Hernandezes or somebody representing the Hernandez family is on the line today. Does the board have any direct questions of the applicant?
Yeah, why would prevent them from going to the same source that the previous owner used so that their trees are not under stress?
Is Mr. Hurt, or do we know Angel who's on the line?
Hi, I'm Carlos Hernandez. I don't know if anybody can hear me right at this moment.
Yes, we hear you, Carlos. We hear you.
Oh, perfect. Do you mind repeating that question? As I was getting myself unmuted, it kind of blocked off.
No, that's fine. The question is, could you go to the same source of water supply that the previous owner used to hold water from to use for your trees so that they're not under a lot of stress?
So let me give you guys a little backstory. We saw this as a great opportunity to acquire this property, and unfortunately, we were kind of pretty much bamboozled and kind of led astray as to what was required and what wasn't required. So to kind of touch on some points that you guys were talking about, the previous owner, Mr. Martinez, stated that no meter was required at the current well that's on the property because it was for some reason grandfathered in. Now I do believe that it's slightly on our side of our fault because we never proceeded to do additional research into this property, and so to be quite honest, we're first-time property owners, so we were just kind of going as we go. But as far as most of the points that you're talking about, we never truly knew that he was hauling water from outside of the property. So, that's also something that should be mentioned. We had no idea of that. But to answer your question, as far as how we can haul, we don't haul any outside water into the property. All the water that we've been using on the property has been from the well. But like it's been mentioned before, not enough water is being pumped out of that well, which has resulted in no nuts being produced this past year. Since we've had the property, really, there's been no mature fruit or any of the trees.
How old are the existing trees?
Pardon?
How old are the existing trees?
I believe most of them are about 5 to 6 years old.
I see.
So far, this is all the information that we truly know, because pretty much after the transaction and change in ownership, he really hasn't given us any callbacks or really been involved with any of us anymore, unfortunately.
And when do you plan to plant the 1,142 new trees?
So we are completely on board with hitting all those points that you talked about, being compliant with the meter. And I think this is a point that we discussed with with a potential well company, to put in a meter on the property. So as soon as we're able to, I apologize. As soon as we're able to put in that new well, after we put in the new meters, when we would plant the additional trees. So however long this process would take, shortly after that, we plan to plant the additional trees.
Have you looked into leasing groundwater rights from other pumpers?
We have not, no.
Do you think that's an option that you could consider?
I'd have to do some more research on that. To my understanding, I feel like the best possible solution would be to just be able to, produce a bigger well that can pump up sufficient water for our property without having to outsource or create any confusion with any outside water from the property.
No, you could still.
Wait, Adam, hang on for 1 second.
He cannot, as a new producer, he would not be able to get water from other producers until he is granted a new production right, and then he could only get it for water that he's already pumped. He would not be on Exhibit 4. He could only get it to pay his replacement water assessments.
No, that's not what I meant. If he goes to somebody on Exhibit 4, and this is, let's say, 1,000 acre-feet from him.
He can't do that. He can
Why not?
only get the amount for what he has used in that given year.
We just approved somebody getting leasing water 2 meetings ago, and he didn't even know how he was going to use that water for future investment.
That was a gentleman that purchased groundwater production.
So there is a distinction. I would refer to
different.
I would refer to
and buying are two different areas. Mr. Leventhal bought production right. So that means he has it forever. And he can.
No, I get it. I get that. I get that. And you're right. It was a purchase.
When you're saying leasing, this gentleman is not on Exhibit 4. He can only purchase replacement water from another party for that year's production. That's all. He has no carryover rights or anything.
Craig, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I think what Patty is saying is basically accurate. He is in a situation, Mr. Hernandez, where he can be in the market, but he's got to be a party with the production right. And we've had parties get that by getting 1 acre foot. So it's not, it's not a huge burden to qualify for that aspect of the situation.
He's a small pumper.
Yeah. This would
so
be...
why couldn't he go, I'll use you, John, as an example, to Mr. Clandry and say, I want to lease water from you to pump from my well, and then come to the board and have the board approve that transaction?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the hoops that would create. It may be possible to do. I don't want to be in the position of having us giving advice to Mr. Hernandez on how he can.
No, I hear you. I'm asking you to let the board know that is a part. Because what I have in mind, Greg, I have a broader view of this, that the Watermaster at one point should facilitate an exchange pool of such transaction as a way, I was saying earlier, of adding one more supply source for replacement water. There are people with surplus water rights that will be willing to, we already do that to a certain extent. The Watermaster does facilitate those leases and sale, but we should do it even more aggressively and in a more organized fashion, so that when there is a need for replacement water, if AVEC doesn't have the replacement water, the Palmdale Water District doesn't have it because of a drought, among other portfolios, we should have this exchange pool, which will be groundwater source from people who have surplus acre feet. And then there should be the other two banks. There should be recycled water. There should be other sources.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. We should look at all of those, and we'll want to be just mindful of what the judgment recites in terms of the ability to use water for replacement water purposes. But with that caveat, we can look at any of those options.
Like, I don't, honestly, today, from the attorneys that I've talked to, from my attorneys, I have never really heard that there is something that will preclude this from happening. But I could be wrong, known to be wrong. But I think we need to be serious about these issues. We need to facilitate other sources of supplies beside two wholesale water agencies, or in the case of Palmdale, wholesale retail, really.
Adam, this is Rob. I think that actually is a good idea to put on a future agenda. I think it would work with Peter's presentation about water availability from the Antelope Valley Water State contractors. And we have just completed our urban water management plans, and that should shed a lot of light on this subject. At this point, from my understanding of being the chairman of the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association also, is that the state contractors do not feel that there is a problem with providing replacement water in the amounts that we've been approving, and specifically for this request today. And Peter and
You're right, Bob. I'm not saying there's a problem today.
So I think it's something we need to certainly keep looking at for the valley. But at this point, the judgment provides means for Mr. Hernandez to use his land productively. He's doing everything that the judgment requires at this point to get approval. He is a landowner that wants to be productive in our community, and I think that's what we should focus on right now. But I agree with you 100%. We need to focus when we get up into the tens of thousands of acres of water approved, and if AVAC and Palmdale and Little Rock Irrigation District say that we can no longer provide replacement water, or we're getting to levels that our urban water management plan shows that we can't, then I think we always have to keep that in mind. But right now, all the agencies feel that we have sufficient supplies to approve applications like this. And I think Peter will provide a presentation that will show you all that in the near future.
Rob?
Yes.
Rob, is there a chance for me to make a comment here?
Please. Yes, of course. Is this Derek?
Yes, it is. I appreciate it. You covered a lot of what I'm going to say, but I do think this is important for the board to think about what's in front of us. And there's two issues to me. The number one issue is that we have an old landowner and a bad actor. And it's something that we continue to bring up, and I'll bring up in the board, in that part of the agenda where it's board new agenda items, is we need to come up with an enforcement plan for this as many as other things. Number two is what you covered, Rob, was we have a new owner, and he's following the judgment. He's following the rules and regs. And we, based upon those, need to, in my mind, approve this permit and approve this application for that. He's planting permanent crops. Fortunately, he's planting a permanent crop. He has permanent crop that is a deficit type crop. So when it doesn't have enough water, it doesn't bear fruit, but it doesn't completely die in pistachios. So he's fortunate in that. And what he's trying to do is secure water, or at least have water that he knows in the future, not year to year where it'll stand. And I think I support that as well. And I think we've covered this enough that knows that replacement water is replacement water when available, and that he then can take other courses and actions to do that. Above and beyond that, we need to still within the walls of this permit and application and make a decision on it.
Thank you, Derek. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Is there a motion to approve resolution 2125?
Make the motion.
You know what, Derek? I was muted, Rob. A question for probably Barton. What can we do to go after Mr. Martinez?
It's too late now to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, the
wait a second. Wait, Craig, before you answer. We just had a motion. I need a second, and then we can have this discussion. I don't want to get
This is Adam. I second the motion.
Motion made by Derek, second by Adam, to approve resolution R2125. Now, John, discussion?
What could be done with Mr. Martinez?
Well, we can put him on notice that we're going to pursue him for past assessments that have not been paid, and then pursue that with the legal process, which I'll update you on the enforcement issues that we're doing with success with the Phelan settlement and with a couple of other draft motions to enforce the payment of assessments. I just think we have to be realistic. I mean, I want to be very forthright with the board that there's a real cost involved in getting these motions prepared, and there's got to be sufficient penalty involved to make it worthwhile the effort. As you saw with the Phelan motion, that was unusual, but that was a very complicated, involved process. And here we have a former owner who didn't comply with the judgment, and now it's over. There's a new owner that's conscientious and wants to comply, And is our time and effort best spent with people that we have that are still parties to the judgment that aren't complying rather than those that haven't complied in the past? And we're trying to find out what their production is, and why they did.
I thought we could go after them for the attorney's fee as well.
Yes, we can.
Well, this even accentuates the importance of getting letters out to these people that are not compliant, and maybe another round of letters. And then I think there's going to be a point in time where the board's going to have to bite the bullet on excuse, and just spend some money and go after some of these people and let them know we're serious.
Yeah.
Okay, John. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion that has been seconded. And Mr. Hernandez, we do thank you for attending the meeting and speaking with us today. I believe that was very helpful for the board to consider your request. So, motion made.
Absolutely.
Second. Any further discussion?
Extremely helpful.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, Mr. Hernandez?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for your time. And we have been working closely with Angel, who I believe is at Watermaster. So
Yes.
if this does get approved, we will be working close in hand with her to, getting that new well, getting that meter, and making sure everything is up to standard with you guys.
Great. We appreciate your cooperation. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 2125 by roll call vote?
Director McLaren,
Yes.
Director Ariki,
Yes.
Director Calandri,
Yes.
Director Urasic,
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes, motion's carried unanimously. Now we're on item 13, consideration possible action to remove accounts receivable of SCI, California Funeral Services, and Joshua Memorial, or DBA Joshua Memorial Park. And I believe Craig's gone.
Yes.
With the presentation.
Yes, this is on the topic of good actors, Mr. Hernandez being one that we just heard from. I think we can sometimes think that all we deal with is problems, and there are some good actors. And that SCI, Joshua Memorial Park, has been forthright with us about their situation, and I wanted to bring to the board's attention a request that they move to remove about $11,000 in attorney's fees that were designated to them for working with them to intervene in the judgment as a non-stipulating party and to give them a production right. It took over a year and a half of effort to work with them, but they were very cooperative. A lot of that research, I think, would be usable for the future if any non-stipulating parties seek to get a production right and intervene in the judgment. SCI successfully intervened as a non-stipulating party back in November of 2019. Then on February of 2021, you'll recall the court ordered, and we participated in the process, that SCI had the right to produce groundwater in the basin and was awarded a production right. We were involved in that request for an intervention and the application for production rights. We never opposed them, but during that time we were incurring attorney's fees for the time spent dealing with the SCI matter. There is no agreement with SCI to pay attorney's fees, and the provision that we adopted, the board adopted back in March, which allows the recovery of extraordinary legal fees, wasn't adopted until after the SCI matter was over. So, right of that, those facts, there's put forward in the memo on page 80 of your board packet. It's my recommendation that we remove the account receivable for $11,000. I think it's $344 as the SCI. I talked to staff about this as to whether this was something that rises to the board level. I think in abundance of caution, we wanted the board to participate in the process and give us direction. But I would recommend that a motion be brought by one of the board members for board approval of eliminating the account receivable as the SCI.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead. Someone, go ahead.
So, John, thank you. This is Adam. Two quick questions, Craig. You said, so the Watermaster Board approved this resolution to collect attorney's fees in March, correct?
Right.
Was it retroactive or was it going forward? I don't recall.
That's a good question. I think it was, was silent on whether it was retroactive or not. I assumed it was applicable from the date it was entered. It's difficult to make retroactive a duty to pay attorney's fees.
All right, that's fine. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing you've said that a lot of the research information that you've done on this case will be used for future intervening parties.
Yes.
Would you estimate, 100%, 90%, 80% of that?
I'd say the research-wise, Adam, maybe 50%.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the primary research was whether they had to intervene as a party, and then some discussion really led by a number of the landowners' council to find what their production right was. We didn't participate actively in that process, but we followed it and incurred fees and time. I just wanted to keep track of what the fees and time were for SCI from the beginning. But their unique situation has been used a number of times to analyze how to intervene. I've sent several people who've asked, how do I intervene, to the intervention motion of SCI as an example of how to do it.
Sure. No, but why did we even bill him if this case was done with prior to the board approval of the attorney's fees changing rules and regulations?
I take responsibility for that. I think we were so concerned to keep track of individual situations where attorney's fees would be recoverable. I erred on the side of overzealous in tracking those fees. I didn't want to be in a position where it took a year and a half, if you recall. They were on the board agenda regularly for months with updates about where they were on their production right. And I just wanted to keep a track of what the attorney's fees were that were incurred in case I got asked someday about it.
So would you say it would have been more appropriate not to bill them?
Well, in retrospect, that's probably right, because I'm advocating now that it be waived. But I didn't know at the time that this was going to be what the situation was, and so I've modified my original position, which was to get every last fee out of everyone that we do extraordinary legal work for.
Fair enough. I just didn't want the reason to be is they were cooperative and therefore we're going to waive the fee. There are more important reasons why we're waiving the fee than they were being cooperative, because a lot of people are being cooperative.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Any
Mr. Chairman, this is John. Could I have permission to ask Galen Kyle to interject some information for me at this point?
Sure, John. Mr. Kyle, do you have...
Galen, are you available?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hey, John, you and I would have loved to have paid $11,000 for our attorney's fees to get our water. That's a pittance. It's just, this didn't even come before committee. That's terrible that we didn't even get to comment on it. Mr. Parton is asking to pay the attorney's fees from a multi-million-dollar company. SCI is the largest funeral and cemetery service in North America. They have over 2,700 companies within the SCI family. They have 1,500 funeral homes and 480 cemeteries in 45 U.S. states, and they are more than able to pay their attorneys. I kind of resent the heck out of Mr. Parton asking us ratepayers, after we paid our own attorney bills, to pay the attorney bill from SCI. Thank you.
And then to continue that thought, Rob, didn't they drag this on much longer than necessary? That this could have been resolved a couple years earlier?
That's a question for Craig.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Director Calandri, is the fact that they sought a much higher production right, and that went through a process of being challenged by landowner group and a number of attorneys that formed a committee to deal directly with SCI. They originally sought 122 acre feet, I believe, something along those lines, might have been even more than that, and ultimately agreed to 38 acre feet. So there was a lot of give and take over a substantial period of time. They had to get experts involved, and it was quite an involved, drawn-out process.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, was their original request absurd? The fact that they requested so much, and after all this, they ended up with 38 acre feet?
I think there was compromise on both ends. Some people think it should be more than 38. SCI obviously does. But that was the compromise the parties achieved and was approved by the court. And I hear what Mr. Kyle is saying loud and clear. I don't take lightly recommending somebody not pay the attorney's fees that have been incurred. But we have to focus on what is the legal basis for recovering those fees. And frankly, we put some teeth into getting adopted amendments to rules and regulations that deal with the incurring of unusual legal fees in a matter. And I think we're in much better legal shape to pursue those going forward as of the adoption of the resolution in March of this year. So I do not take lightly what I'm asking the board to consider. And if the board wants to give another month for further input from the advisory committee, it's happy to do it. Obviously it's been on the books for a while, and adoption of a resolution is not crucial for today.
Craig,
well, go ahead, Derek.
Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, so to Craig is, number one, I do echo Galen's comments so far as the frustration from, as a party to the judgment and the economics that we've all spent on that. I guess the question is more pragmatic. It's number one is, do we have a legal footing to stand on to try to collect these fees? And then number two is, your judgment of our ability of success to collect. Then number two is, what would the expense be to collect those, and who would be responsible? What would it cost that, if we did go after it and lose, what would the cost of that be as well?
Yeah, it's $11,000, and it's on the borderline of whether it makes sense to spend. As you know, if we were in a legal position, if I thought our legal position was absolutely solid, I wouldn't even be bringing the topic to the board. I can work with counsel on a compromise number. They may be on the phone and have heard this back and forth and realize there's substantial reservation, in which case I'm happy to talk to them.
Thank you.
Did you already talk to them and they refused to pay?
No. I had a conversation with SCI's counsel, and they just raised the issue of what the legal basis was for them paying. And I, on my own, brought the memo to the board's attention and making the recommendation.
So if this happened after March of this year, would we have a better legal basis to go after the $11,000?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Craig, this is Rob.
Yeah.
Have we retroactively billed anyone else for legal services?
Well, there are parties that owe past replacement water assessments and administrative assessments.
Right. That's not what I meant directly related to the action we took for the work we do on different applications and different situations.
Well, we've pursued past fees, and there's past attorney's fees owing. I'm trying to remember whether we've got outstanding issues going forward, but we've got a number of people still on the account receivable list, obviously.
Right.
That we're not compromising in any way getting full payment for them.
Okay.
I'm going to throw one other thing in there. Maybe this is absolutely unimportant, but as a member of this community for my whole life, as they fought this issue of water, which I think could have been resolved much earlier, in the interim, they let 60 trees die in that cemetery that was once the most beautiful cemetery probably in the valley. And I know probably 20% of all the people that are buried in there, and I thought it was a disgrace what they did and disrespecting those graves. So I have some personal issues I may have to put aside, but at this point, I am not in favor of approving waiving their fees, and that's how I feel about it. And I'm saying that because I have had so many calls from family members over the last 2 years or 3 years asking me to do something. Please do something. So I'm just sharing those emotions with the board.
Thank you, John. It sounds like the consensus might be to put this over till the next meeting and allow the advisory committee input and bring it back on the agenda for the next meeting. Is that the consensus of the board?
Yes. And go ahead, Kathy, please.
Yes, I definitely feel that they should be able to put their input. So we must follow through with allowing them to have a say.
Mm-hmm. And if I may, Mr. Chair, our council, Craig, we need a very solid legal basis for either to bill him or not bill him. Given the change in the rules and regulations and any other legal opinions that you have or the other attorneys have.
Yeah, I appreciate the board's response and input on this. It tells me it's the right thing to bring it to the board's attention. So we'll prepare that information and see what the board wants to do about it next month.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves on to item 14, Administrator's Report.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Rob. This is Matt. Got two items to update the board on. The first item began on page 83 of your board packet is a proposed draft scope of work and budget from Todd Groundwater for the years 2022 through 2024. So this is a result out of some recent conversations that I've had with Todd Groundwater and starting to think ahead as to what their proposed scope would look like if we choose to continue with Todd Groundwater. As you know, there's been some comments about going out this year with an RFP, and my hope is that we avoid that and can work with Todd Groundwater for the next 3 years in developing a refined scope of work and fee. So the kind of the biggest change as you go through the scope of work is the addition of some modeling effort that occurs over a couple years. You'll see that the proposed fee at this time is about $222,000 the first year, and the third year it goes up to $224,000. Just a reminder that the current scope and amendment ends at the end of this calendar year, and my recommendation is that we present this draft scope of work and fee to the advisory committee in August, and then bringing that back with future discussion with the full board. So we're not seeking any action today, just bringing it to the board's attention and let the board know we're working on this with Todd Groundwater. And then the second item I have is just an update on, as you know, we have a vacancy as the second representative for the landowner seat due to the retirement of George Capello. And we sent out last week the notice to all the Exhibit 4 property or production right holders, the notice of nominations for that seat. So those nominations are due back by August 6th, which is a week from this Friday. And we have identified Lynn Glidden, who's a Deputy Director of Public Works at the City of Palmdale, to serve as the Inspector of Election. So that's all I have to report, unless you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Matt. Any questions by the board?
About the next contract with Todd Water. A comment and a question. I mean, we've went through a lot of growing pain with them, and they understand our needs and what the valley needs and all that. So that's the good thing, for sure. You know, they have a lot of experience and all that. What I would recommend, maybe that Todd Groundwater has already done so, but between Todd Groundwater and Matt, if you guys could look at creative ways and more efficient ways to do things, particularly the annual report, repetitive tasks, maybe finding some sort of a database model or not model, but the database that would help us crunch these numbers in a quicker fashion, keep records, comparing, and things of that nature. I think we've been now at it for 5 or 6 years, and I'm sure if we put our heads together, we can find better, cheaper, more effective things or ways to do our business so that we can cut costs a little bit.
All right, thank you, Adam. We'll kick that around with Todd Groundwater.
Any other board comments? Okay, hearing no further board comments, we'll move on to item 15, Watermaster Engineers Report. Phyllis or Kate?
Yes, hello again. It's Phyllis Stannon, and I just have a few quick items, and I'm going to share a screen quickly to assist in my reporting. So on page 92 of your board packet, you will find a similar chart on new production applications that have been approved and qualified small pumper applications that have been approved. There's no change at all to this from your previous package, but we wanted to continue to incorporate this into every board packet. So this is really just for your information, and it's identical to what you saw on the June 30th special meeting. Are there any questions associated with anything on this chart?
No, thank you.
Okay, if not, I'm going to move to the Sigma reporting process. This is just an update for the board because this is coming up. We're going to be required to file your 2020 annual report along with water use data templates that DWR requires in the process of adjudicated basins reporting under Sigma. The online filing has to be done as soon as the annual report is approved, and the water use data, of course, is being consistently reported as shown in your annual report. And I just have a quick couple of screens that show what these templates look like. You can always go online and see this for yourself. This is the reporting process. You see on this slide, this upper information, which just simply gives some basic information about the adjudication. And then these water use screens are what we fill in based on the information and data from your annual report. And so sometimes it's a nice way of actually just looking at a table of the final numbers. So you can see that the Department of Water Resources asks that you show water use broken down by source type. And so we have broken ours down into groundwater, surface water, and recycled or reused water. And you can see that information there. And then the total water use is also shown on one of the templates. In addition, they ask for the methods that were used to determine the information. And so we break it down in terms of wells that we know are metered versus wells that are being reporting as being estimated. And then in addition to these water use tables, we also show the change in groundwater and storage table. These are the combined reports that you see, the figures that we include in the annual report every year with respect to changes in groundwater and storage that are done from the water level contour mapping process. And so we are showing this being a very drought year. We had as you might recall from our previous report on the annual report, we have a negative change in groundwater and storage for calendar year 2020 as measured from March of 2020 through March of 2021. So this is just typical. These are the typical templates. We've done this every year, and we are going to be filing these again. And so we've provided the full information, I believe, on the website. And so if anybody has any questions about this, I'd be happy to take it now.
So fellas, the yes. minus 55,238, what that means, because it didn't rain and there was no recharge, so there was a delta of 55,238 between how much the recharge was and how much the pumping was?
So it's certainly related to recharge, but I would say that this number in particular is really controlled a bit by the groundwater banking in the subbasin. One of the things that the methodology that we use to determine this is a comparison of water level contour maps. We do we create that surface in GIS and do a map subtraction of that, and then apply the storage numbers. And so what happened, Adam, is that as of March 2020, we saw that the water levels around the groundwater banks were high as a result of recharge, not only in 2020, but also from resultant recharge in 2019. And then there was very little recharge after that. And so as a result of that, we had a change in water levels around the banking areas that I think controlled this year's change in groundwater storage as much as anything else. But certainly it is related to a lack of wet conditions in the San Gabriels, and then recharge back into the subbasin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is no way for us really to segregate the natural recharge from the artificial recharge and relate the natural recharge to the pumping. Is that accurate?
That's accurate with respect to the methodology that we've been using. But as Matt mentioned in the previous item, the scope that we have for the ongoing annual reports actually includes a more detailed analysis associated with the use of groundwater models and with a basin characterization tool on recharge. So we would be able to provide a much more detailed accounting of inflows and outflows that result in the change in storage, whereas right now we're just sort of putting blinders on, looking at the maps and saying, here's the change according to the maps. But with modeling, there's a lot more detailed information with respect to the water budget. So we'd be able to see that going forward.
Would you say that distinction between artificial and natural recharge in relationship to the groundwater levels would be of value?
Yes, absolutely. And it would be the one thing that I think would be of immense value would be able to document the natural recharge into the subbasin more accurately than we can do it right now. And that is the part of the purpose of proposing in this new scope of work that we incorporate these basin characterization tools that would be able to allow us to do that more accurately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on any of the Sigma reporting or anything about changing groundwater and storage? Hearing none, I just have one last slide, and I wanted to pop this up because there's been so much discussion about this today, and I love hearing it because I feel so strongly that we've really done a lot to encourage compliance with the rules and regulations in this basin, and certainly most of the parties have stepped up to the challenge, but some have not. And boy, do we really would like to get full reporting compliance. The largest discharge, when you think about the water budget of this basin, the largest discharge by far is pumping. And so that's the one thing we really would like to have full reporting on. Now, we can make some assessments, and one of the things that I've done here in the second bullet is just remind us, I get a little excited about trying to say that we really do need full reporting, but the production rights that are associated with those who have not reported is not huge. However, it is 4,000 acre feet a year about. And so what we would like to do, of course, is to encourage staff and council in any way possible to continue to push parties for complete production reporting and, of course, for complete meter compliance. Those are the ways that we are really going to be able to adhere to our main responsibility in the judgment, which is the reporting of safe yield components. And that's all I have for today. I'll be glad to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I will turn everything back over to the board. I'm sorry, Adam.
Before you turn it over, I wanted to hear your opinion on what we discussed a while back about replacement water, potential exchange pool, identifying other sources of supplies to do so. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I concur with what Rob was saying. We're not at a dire point in the process, but I think the idea of a Watermaster is to manage water supplies and hand it over to the people that will come after us as a process. And I think the more sources of supplies we identify, whether they're real or just planned, the better off the valley would be, and the better off the board would be to make decisions in approving new pumping. So I wanted, you're an expert in groundwater, you're our expert, you're our master engineer. I wanted to hear your thought on that.
Well, I have several thoughts. First of all, I agree wholeheartedly that there isn't anything so far that has risen to the occasion of concern with respect to the amounts of water. Having said that, the time to do the planning is not when it rises to the amounts that you're concerned about, but before. So I think it's a good comment and a good process. Incorporating IRWIP into your process seems like a reasonable way to go. I certainly know that they have come up with some plans and projects that the Watermaster could and should support with respect to sort of making additional water sources available to the Watermaster. So, I can't give you anything really specific today. I am in constant balance with trying to reduce your fees for my work and at the same time provide work for you that I feel like would be the most helpful. So I do support planning for new future new production applications. That is a huge concern of mine, as well as I know it is of the advisory committee and council and probably everyone else that's concerned in this basin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Any other comments from the board or questions? Phyllis, I had one question on the non-reporting parties. How do we keep track of their carryover, or can we?
I would say that we can't.
And
perhaps they're going to have to forfeit that unless they can document something that is more obvious to us than just saying, hey, it was about this.
Yeah, that's what, that was the question I would have of Craig at this point. We have some, well, as you know, we have non-reporting parties that have historically non-reported, and if we can't keep track of their carryover because they're non-reporting, then is there a way to forfeit that carryover and encourage them to report or forfeit the carryover?
I think we put the onus on them to prove it up instead of the onus on us, and put them on notice. We have expansive ability to enforce the letter and spirit of the judgment, and that is definitely not the letter and spirit of the judgment to just say, trust us, we've got it right. So I can work with Phyllis. We can report back next month on approaches to getting that under control. That is troublesome news.
Yeah, I agree that we should do everything possible to not encourage, but we require the reporting, and if not, come up with every potential means that we can enforce it or take away rights from those non-reporting parties. It's not fair to all those who do report.
Yeah.
Incentives and penalties.
I think that's necessary for us to do something like that.
Because there is a likelihood that they're over pumping too, right?
I don't know how to judge it. I
know, but I'm just saying, we're worried about them carrying over water when they could be over pumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, I'm just brainstorming on everything we can do to
sure.
Require enforcement, and that's a good question that we can, Phyllis and Craig can talk about. Are any of them claiming they have any carryover rights if they're not reporting them and they're not metered? And if they are, maybe this board can take action to take the carryover from them for not reporting and not metering.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, this is Derek, and we keep talking about enforcement, and I know we're not in Agenda 17, but, I'd sure like this to be part of what staff works towards is, coming up with an enforcement plan and policy that we can, start working on to address, I think 90% of what we get frustrated about and everything we're reviewing is the bad actors.
Yeah.
And we just need to jump on top of that and address it. I think that's what the public continues to remind us of, and I think it's what we continue to talk about here.
Yep. I agree, Derek.
I couldn't agree more.
That's a segue into item 16, the General Counsel report about the enforcement actions that have been going on.
Happy to report, and I couldn't agree more with Director Yurisek's comments about this situation of enforcement. It's a classic example. Somebody wants a carryover right and doesn't meter. Doesn't seem to go together because you've got to meter in order to appropriately calculate the carryover. So we'll report on that next month. The good news item, reporting about the details of the settlement with Phelan concerning their outstanding replacement water assessments and their attorney's fees and interest owed. We met in closed session a couple of times on this, had nothing to report out as of last session, but the board was made aware of the deal points which after the closed session on the 30th, we communicated immediately to Phelan, who accepted the terms of the agreement, which are reflected on the memo on page 100. Just to remind folks where we were with Phelan. In 2016, they owed $684,000 in replacement water assessment. 2017, that number is $345,000, and then $161,000 in 2018, $2,900 in 2019, and $164,000 plus some in 2020. So there's substantial replacement water assessment due. We filed a motion on the 23rd, and that was part of the board packet for monetary relief and injunctive and declaratory relief, seeking an amount of, for the past RWAs not paid, interest and attorney's fees. And the next day, Phelan engaged us in settlement discussions that we discussed with the board. And we agreed that Phelan's duty in terms of payment of interest would cease on the day that their check arrived at Antelope Valley Watermaster. And so that cut off some of their interest. They were very anxious to pay and cut off the interest that was accruing. And we agreed that we would reduce marginally some of the attorney's fees that would not have to be incurred in going to a hearing on the matter. So that was another $4,000 or so. But in total agreement from Phelan was to pay over $1.3 million in past due replacement water assessment, over $80,000 in fees and attorney's fees and costs, and interest up through July 2nd of about $145,000 for a total payment of $1.581 million. I do want the board to be aware that part of the agreement with Phelan was that by agreeing to this settlement proposal, they were not compromising the right to continue to pursue their appeal of the court's order in 2018 that Phelan owes replacement water assessment for 2016 and 17. That appeal is still going forward. If Phelan was to prevail on that appeal and win that appeal, the argument would be that we owe them the money back that we just received July 1st. This brief will be due next month, and then several weeks after that, Phelan's reply, and then presumably oral argument sometime perhaps in early fall. One other update on the appellate process. The California Supreme Court in the last week denied the Willis class's appeal, denied their petition for review in the California Supreme Court. So the Court of Appeal decision will become the final decision as far as the Willis class appeal is concerned. And as far as last topic, but not least, the enforcement update, 3 further parties were contacted about their need to pay their assessments. I plan on giving a thorough update in closed session on those next month, but the letter and the draft motions have gone out to their counsel, and I'm hoping we get as positive a response to report to the board next month at the board meeting in terms of their response. That is my report. One last thing, just so the board knows, we do keep track of who's intervening in the judgment, and last month you approved the intervention by David Leventhal as trustee of the Antelope Valley Water Trust, and that intervention was successful this month, and we did not oppose it. The staff is alerted to Mr. Leventhal as trustee is now a party to the judgment. So that's all that I have to report. I'm happy to take questions.
Are there any questions for Craig at this time?
I have a question. What can we do with that payment of $1.5 million? What fund does that go into?
I think that's a question for Matt, Director Calandry, as to how to keep track of that. But obviously, we need to be aware that in the next 6 months or so, there could be a decision if Court of Appeal reversed the trial court and found that Phelan wasn't liable for replacement water assessment payments.
Yeah.
We'd have to pay some.
Thank you, Craig. This is Matt. So that's a good question, Director Landry. So right now our plan is to put those funds in the money market account, which is where all the replacement water assessments are accredited to. So we'll wait till that appeal is done before we start purchasing replacement water or spending those funds.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Any other questions?
One more question, and maybe Matt and Craig can tell me this, is so the interest and the fees that they did pay, where do those go? Like, what account does that go into? Does that go into administration?
Yeah, so I think the reimbursement for attorney fees is pretty straightforward. That needs to go into our administrative assessment account. That's the $81,319. The interest is funds that were collected for past due replacement water assessments. So I think we need to give a little more thought on that, whether that's added to the replacement water cost or does it go back to the administrative assessment? So I don't have a recommendation right now. I think we need to discuss that further. And that's on the $144,000 interest payment.
Are you looking for direction from the board?
Yeah, we'd look for input from the board or council. What would be appropriate on that?
I think, Derek, that'd be appropriate agenda topic. It's going to be several months before we can disperse it, and it'd be good for Craig and Matt to consider it further before we give direction at this time.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we're on item 17, board members' request for future agenda items. There were several items that came up that...
Well, this is Adam. I would like to see from Matt, working with our Watermaster engineer, some sort of a framework. It doesn't have to be fixed for the board to consider for water supply planning and, replacement water approval. Some ideas, even if it needs to be in the form of a workshop, we just need to start that process, Matt, and I'll be happy to work with you if you need to, so that we can just come up with some sort of a framework, and then, implement that as we go. It doesn't have to be all implemented at once, so long we have the components in one toolbox, and then we can, as the opportunity rises and there is an opportunity to add water supplies or do some agreements on future purchases or whatever the case may be, do that.
I agree. Maybe a workshop would be good because that way everybody involved could take part in what we decide to use.
Good.
Adam, I made the recommendation to the administration committee, you and Derek, to kind of put together a framework to bring back to the board.
That's fine. That's fine with Matt leading us in that committee we need. I mean, we've kicked it around a little bit at this last Friday meeting, but we could make it a little bit more granular.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Yep.
So we'll put that to the administration committee at this time to work on a little further. Any other?
And then my request about our letter to the Board of Supervisors, want to bring that up and discuss it.
And that's regarding their resolution.
The ban on commercial cannabis, on the unincorporated Los Angeles area. We need to maybe take a position on that and discuss it, and possibly if we agree, send a letter or ask for a moratorium, or we need to deal with it. And also
John, is that separate from Galen's request regarding?
No, that's the same situation. Yeah, that's the same situation.
Okay, so my recommendation is we'll draft a letter that we can bring back for the board to consider, or?
I think we need to.
Okay.
Or you have a framework.
Yeah, we need to discuss it first. See what the letter will contain.
So here's. John, here's my into it is the issue. There's two I think separate issues that the Board of Supervisors are considering action to regulate and license cannabis grows within the unincorporated county areas. That's one issue. And then the second issue is we certainly in the Antelope Valley have been confronted with many illegal grows with very bad actors who are taking and stealing water in our area, putting in illegal wells, and all types of things, which the county supervisors are very aware of, where they've already done a lot of enforcement action on. And I think everyone I know feels that they should continue the enforcement actions, and the Valley should participate in any way we can. So those are two very separate issues. So do you want both of those issues on the next agenda?
I don't see why not. I think
I'd like to see both issues. We need them to understand we really need the support. I know Tom Lackey was asking for support letters from everybody to support enforcement, as well as having those conversations about opening up the unincorporated area to more.
And then another item I'd like to bring up is the SBI issue. I think we might be able to bring some additional facts into the conversation next month.
Yeah, that's going to be on the agenda for sure, and it's going to go to the advisory committee. Yes.
What is that FBI thing?
That's the Joshua Memorial Park.
Oh, yes.
And then, Adam, you had talked about the Watermaster's involvement in more of, I think, the brokering of carryover water production rights.
Yeah, that would be in that framework. There would be a portfolio of approach or a bunch of tools in a toolbox, and I think we need to kind of explore them as we go and see what will work or what will. Maybe at the end of the day, 10 years from today, maybe we will have like multiple supply sources for water replacement. One of them is AVEC, Holmdel Water District, Exchange Pool, the other groundwater bank, recycled water. You never know. I mean, the more the valley grows, the more the water supply becomes tighter and tighter, the more need to have other sources of supplies come into the valley. And that's how these tools will be. They will be there and they will be developed as we move forward.
And is
Like
that
a wa-
something you want to discuss in the administrative committee first, I would imagine?
Yes, we will discuss it, and then under the engineer report or the administrative report, Matt is going to report back to the board on what the committee came up with, and then possibly we'll do the next step. Should maybe one recommendation would be for the board to change the MOU for the integrated regional water management plan and become a party to that MOU and adopt the 2019 as a starting point. Maybe one of the recommendations would be to institute something, and the board would have to take action on those at a later date.
Great. Okay, then we'll leave that item for the administrative committee. Okay, any other agenda items from the board?
Rob, just to make sure, I think we talked about this before, but the enforcement policy and procedures.
Mm-hmm.
for metering,
Right.
No,
as well as other things.
for everything.
Right.
Like, what is our enforcement policy, period?
Metering,
There's
reporting.
other things.
all that.
Yeah. Illegal users.
That,
all of it.
my recommendation is that's such a big, broad issue, covers multiple things. Maybe we have another type of workshop with the board and legal counsel to go through the enforcement.
Yeah, I like that idea, rather than make it a separate agenda.
Yeah, because it'd take up the whole meeting.
Yeah, take it as a workshop.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely. I'd be much more thorough.
If it works out okay, we could do it before the next Watermaster meeting.
So, Craig, would you be prepared before the next Watermaster meeting to do like an hour workshop before the meeting begins, starting at 9 a.m.?
Sure.
Okay. Derek, will that suffice?
That's great. I think that's a great option.
Okay, good. Okay.
Well,
Any other agenda items?
One last thing, and this is Adam, and this is not an action, an item in the agenda. It's more of a clarification. Director Paris, Chairman Paris, you mentioned or you asked Craig if we have issued any retroactive legal bills. Part of the homework, Craig, that you will be doing, which is finding a legal basis or lack thereof for us to go after the cemetery. I would like to know the answer to that as well. We just want to make sure that we're consistent in our policy or our application of collecting the fee.
Good point. We'll do it.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other agenda items? So I want to thank the public and all the board members for their attention and participation in the meeting. I thought it went really well and appreciate everyone's comments. And at this time, if there's nothing further, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.